So again, it's really windy here today. This is the main structure at Ollyantatambo. This behind me here. And giant blocks, really. There's one block back here that's probably 50 tons. And I just had a group from the Smithsonian here. It's very interesting to listen to their theories about it. It's amazing how we can convince ourselves of anything. And I grew up in scientism, I understand it. So across the valley, a gray area up on the mountainside about 1,000 feet up, that's the granite that's been matched to these cut blocks, to these formed blocks. And of course the Incas were here, but they came much, much later. These giant blocks were much, much earlier. And that's the whole story on megalithic sites across the planet, that we always confuse whoever comes later, whether it's Baalbek or wherever it is, that they actually built it. They didn't. There were earlier structures there. I'm going to show you one thing here. These kind of sort of metal connector places, it looks like, were also prevalent in Tiwanaku, very similar. This block right here, I can't get around and show it to you, but basically, if I do this, maybe, it's a giant block. So, anyway, that's the confusion. Obviously, the Inca were here, but if you look at the stone walls over there, they're made of smaller stones. And now they try to copy, quote, their gods. They try to copy them because they're trying to honor them. Therefore, that gateway that leans inward a little bit and so forth. But this is much, much older. This is the same. These are the gods, the guys with the elongated heads. Let's get real. An ayahuasca ceremony down the road, down the valley, right back here. When I asked about that, they're history for us, pre-Inca. They're the ancient ones. They're the gods that the Quechua and the Incas called. Chacuti, across here on the mountain, you know, his face and the granary over here. That's much, much later. That's Spanish time. That's fighting time. But the Temple of the Sun, what they call it, those are 50-ton blocks each right there. 50 tons each. They're giant. They're about 10 feet deep as well, besides what you see in the front. So my surmise, what I can sense into it, some giant earthquake hit and it scattered a lot of it. I mean, they're literally down the valley. Down in the marketplace in the town, there's some of these stones laying on the ground. So it was a big earthquake. The stones rolled away from this megalithic site. And later the Incas came and built their stuff on top of it, you know, like granaries up in the mountainside here. You know, where they would store grains and so forth. But that's the conundrum across the planet, whether it's in India, ancient stuff from Lemuria, whether it's in here, like Tiwanaku for sure. I haven't been there yet, but look at those stone sites in Mexico. The ancient gods, these beings from other planets, they're ETs, they're family, they're human just like us, came and built this stuff. This is an unbelievable design. The cuts in the stones, the size of the stones. So the prevailing academic theory is that from these quarries, or over here, somehow they took these 50-ton blocks, brought them 1,000 feet down the mountain, got them across the river, back up the valley, and placed them all here. What I see is this. I see there's places where they work on the rock itself. I don't have a good example here. They would take the existing rock and they would literally melt it. Like here's a little remnant piece of it. This rock down here, and there's very good examples of it surrounding the area, where it's literally, you can tell, melted and cut straight into the rock. They would do that as a foundation. You can see it in Cusco, giant swaths of actual melted rock. And then they would fit these back into it. Then they would fit this kind of stuff on top of that. Many examples of it. And then, how long ago was this? I'll tell you, my sense of it is thousands of years ago. It could be 30,000 years ago. It could be 50,000 years ago. It's Lemurian influence. It's the ancient Pacific civilizations that came here. Not the Atlanteans so much. There could have been some mixing in Tiwanaku, Pumapunku, with Atlantean civilizations, but mostly here, I feel intuitively, if you tap into it, and this is the only way that we're going to be able to do that, it would come from Lemuria. So again, a huge difference between the gods' constructions, whoever they were, making blocks like this with obvious notches and fittings, cornerstones. They're really perfect. Again, this is from granite all over the valley. I don't think it was from just over the valley. I think it was from here as well. They cut in and used some of these stones as well. Fountains. This is the whole fountain area here where the water flows through many different ways. Notice, if I can do this right, that the water comes, there's two channels here. One being used and one not being used as well. Now some of these blocks, these right here, you can see have been cut in. There's holes into the granite. Now here's an interesting fact. If we walk, you can see all up on this mountain, it's all been cut in various pieces. If we walk around the corner, we can see two unfinished places that they cut the holes first. Up in there, let's see if I can do this right. Anyway, similar to what we just looked at, there's a little spot up in here where they've cut those squarish holes into the rock, but they've not cut the rock off. They cut the holes first. They left it in place. It's attached to the mountain. How do you do that? The stonemasons today, you talk to them and say, we can't do that. It's perfectly square inside those holes. This area's off limits, but I went up there yesterday when there was nobody around. Amazing. So those two little stones we saw down here, they're now loose and can be placed somewhere. That's how they tried to cut them. That's how they cut them, but they left them for some reason. It was unfinished. The llamas are deciding to move to another spot. So down here, I want to show you this part. First of all, there's beautiful water features throughout. It's windy today, so I get occasionally sprayed. Here's an awesome example of what I call the melting rock technique. If you look up here, so they're super smooth. And so I don't think they just quarried this stuff from across the valley. I think they did here. Or this is how they would create a foundation for a block. Like they'd put the block straight into the mountain itself, because this is existing up there on top at the Temple del Sol, the Temple of the Sun as well. And all over Cusco you'll see this kind of melted look, or like it turns soft and someone cut through it with a knife. Right here is a strong example of it. This is a big square block there. And so if we walk around the corner, in the super wind, we can see here, okay, here's Inca construction. Inca construction here. Now compare that to melting that rock up there. I mean, how did they do that? How did they slice rock like that? Or cut it? So it's a great example right here, juxtaposed. Inca style, and then whatever that stuff up there is. I'm trying to angle the camera so you can see it. Yeah, this stuff. So that stuff up there is what I call the cut or sliced or melted type rock versus the regular Inca construction, which is when they're obviously doing this stuff, making the same shape, the sort of leaning in windows and doorways and that, trying to copy, I would say, what, quote, their gods did a long time ago. The shamans also were in touch with these beings, but these beings were here a long, long time ago. Like I said in our ayahuasca ceremonies, I try to contact them and they're not forthcoming. But I know the shamans at the time, the pre-Inca shamans, certainly were in contact even with, quote, these gods, whoever they were, whatever you believe, after they left. And so when they took their fancy toys and their power tools and their power ceremonies and left, then obviously the shamans wanted to bring them back, and therefore it's the usual thing of trying to copy their construction, so forth. So the Templo del Sol up there, Inca terraces, where I just came from, the water gardens, and here's some more water gardens.